Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we've got the Kizer Justice, and this is a knife I was not aware of, but I was checking out some different knives and saw this in, I think I was on White Mountain Knives. By the way, go over there, use my discount code, save yourself 10%. But I was over there checking things out, saw this design, and just the overall look of this knife really kind of drew me to it, and I wanted to look a little closer. So, I did some Googling, kind of found out some of the details on it, and I was pretty compelled by this. So I went ahead and had Justin send me one for review. And I have to say that this is an interesting knife and one that I could see having a pretty broad appeal. Now, there's a couple little hiccups here that make it maybe not for everybody, but overall, I've actually enjoyed this knife a lot, and I find myself picking this up a lot of times where when I want exactly what this offers, which is not something crazy expensive, but something a little nicer than maybe a full-on budget knife. And so I thought I'd share this with you guys, and it may be that this will appeal to some of you who are watching as well. Let's quickly hit the size and weight on this, and I think a lot of the theme for this knife will be, it sort of lands in this nice middle ground. So size and weight on this, 8 5/8 overall. So it's a large-ish knife, but it's not this massive hulking thing. 3 3/4 inch blade, 4 7/8 handle, and almost 4 inches of grip area. Now, oh, and by the way, it comes in at 4.9 ounces. So interestingly, again, these numbers sort of, land in this sort of middle ground number. To be considered light, I would kind of say, oh, it needs to be under 4 ounces. To be really heavy, if it was over 6 ounces maybe. But right at that 5 ounce mark is pretty reasonable. The blade length, the handle size, everything is kind of right in this sort of reasonable, carryable ground, especially, if you like slightly larger stuff. If you never go bigger than a mini grip Tillian, well, they'll know this is not for you. But, for me, 8 5/8 is not really a large knife. It's sort of still close enough to that standard 8 1/4 that I kind of consider it moderately sized. Carries pretty well. I mean, it's not super heavy, lots of grip area. So again, it lands in this sort of nice middle ground. There are other knives we could point to, sure, that are bigger or a little smaller, but this is, I suspect this is probably just right for a lot of people. And we'll talk about that with ergos as well when we get there. All right, so that's the first thing, is size and weight. Let's move on to the blade. So we've already mentioned that it's N690 steel. Which is actually, maybe I haven't mentioned that it's N690 steel, but it is. So we've got N690 steel with this really nice satin finish, drop point blade, fairly, standard eighth inch blade stock, so 125 thousandths, very thin behind the edge, which is rather impressive. So this is only 17 thousandths behind the edge, which is really, really good. So you're getting fairly substantial stock, a flat grind, which is tempting. And again, they've struck a nice balance point on a lot of features here. So fairly fine point for when you need that kind of stuff, but they have tried at least to achieve a certain amount of toughness and durability going with this flat grind. And they've also tried to get this to cut pretty well with a very thin edge. And all of those things have worked out pretty well and culminate in a nicely balanced blade. Again, N690 steel. So, it's not S30V, it's not a super steel, but it's also not 9CR18 MOV or something like that. It's sort of in this middle ground. My experience, most people would say N690 compares to like VG10. I probably had slightly better performance out of N690 than VG10, but it's still in that ballpark and makes this a perfectly appropriate steel for this knife at this price point. Okay, so what about the action? Well, the action is pretty pleasant. So flipper tab or thumb stud deployment both work very well. And just a little note on that, it's actually can be a little tougher to achieve than maybe we give credit for. But to get a knife that flips well, you often want that detent a little bit stiffer. To get a knife that deploys well with thumb studs, you want to back that detent off a little bit. So getting the two balanced out so that both work really, really comfortably can be a challenge, and Kizer has done a nice job with that. They've also done a nice job with the smoothness. One of the things I will say about Kizer's Vanguard line is that sometimes as you're moving through the range of motion here, you can sort of feel those ball bearings rolling around. It's not as clean and smooth as I would wish it was, but this one is well done. So if you've had other Kizer Vanguard knives, and I guess maybe older ones the way I have, the action is always decent, but it's not spectacular. This is actually pretty smooth and pretty enjoyable. It is on bearings, okay? And when it comes to a knife like this, where it's definitely in sort of the harder use range, where it's meant to be, a little more substantial, I like to see washers there, but bearings are not the end of the world. And I have lots of knives with bearings that I've used in lots of situations and had them perform really, really well. All right, the lock bar, of course, is nice and accessible. The tension is really comfortable, and the lockup itself is very, very solid, so no movement of any kind, which, frankly, I haven't really had any, I don't think no Kizers stand out in my mind as having problems with blade play. All right, so from that regard, the action is pretty nice. Is it as nice as, I don't know, a $500 Riot, or, something really, really outstanding, or even maybe some of the higher end titanium Kizers? Well, it's not quite there, but it's very, very enjoyable. The handle is the other thing that I really like. And frankly, from the perspective of a good utility cutting tool, what you want is a substantial, comfortable handle that really allows me to get some work done, and you want a good blade. And this has those two components really, really well done. So G10 handle over stainless steel liners here. We've got a backspacer construction, glass breaker at the back, deep carry pocket clip, and it is, there you go, milled out a little bit to save on weight, but not aggressively milled out to save on weight. By the way, there's one feature here, this blue line on the pocket clip. It seems like Kizer was kind of aiming at the law enforcement market with this. They call it the Justice. It's got this blue line on the clip. And that I don't really like. One, why limit your market, right? Like, just make a good knife. And if it's good, then everybody will buy it, including, members of law enforcement. Unless they were like specifically contracted by some police department to make this, which I can't imagine happening, but maybe it did. Okay, but outside of that, it doesn't make sense to specifically call this the Justice and market it that way. So in terms of design, I could have really done without the blue line. The other hiccup here is the non-flush fitting screws. Now, having said that, I've carried this quite a bit and used it a fair bit, and I don't have a problem with it. I think I saw a review somewhere, or heard someone mention maybe on Instagram, or even commented on my video, that they were going to remove this blue line. I'm not going to do that. That doesn't seem necessary to me. I'm just not in love with it. Now, in terms of, so that's sort of the construction and design features, some nice little milling lines here that do add just a touch of detail, I guess. I'm not a big fan of glass breakers on knives, but this one doesn't get in the way, and it doesn't interfere with anything that you're trying to do, so I can sort of give it a pass, I guess. And then we've got a lanyard hole, again, that's fairly unobtrusive and doesn't get in the way a whole lot. Does say Justice there on the blade. I guess I should have pointed that out in Kizer on the other side. So those are the design points of the handle, but of course more people are concerned about ergonomics, and in hand, in a hammer grip, in a saber grip, they've done a really nice job. This is a knife that inspires a lot of confidence. It's grippy enough without being like just sandpaper or something. It's grippy enough. It's very confidence inspiring and quite comfortable for, if you really want to get some work done, it will do the job for you. So that is a little bit nicer. It's not as good as, I don't know, an 80-10, which has sort of been my measuring stick lately, but it's good. Okay, so now that we've gotten through all of the features, I like the blade. The action is enjoyable. It works whenever you want it to. The lock is easy to get a hold of, and in hand, it feels pretty good. A couple little design cues that I'm not in love with, and I guess I should point out, I didn't mention that I do like the way they've done the plunge grind here, giving us a good bit of life in this blade. So having gotten that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and grab a couple of comparisons. One obvious one is going to be the Rat Model 1. Okay, and could you save a little money going to the Rat 1? Yeah, you're going to be D2 steel, which is, good steel, but not going to be corrosion resistant. Comfortable handle, equally comfortable. No bearings. Depends on how much you like the action, but certainly that's a considerable option to take a look at. I did want to throw in, this is not a good comparison, but it's similar size and it's from Civivi. So there are a number of Civivis that you could put sort of side by side with this, and the action's going to be pretty stinking good. You know, the backlash is pretty well my favorite Civivi. If you're just going to buy one Civivi and you want a really good folding knife, the backlash is fantastic. This is not really directly comparable because this is going to be a little more utilitarian, but it is a good example of a large Civivi with really nice action, that some may want to, or that gives you an idea that there are decent overseas manufacturers out there. I will throw in a couple of maybe similarly styled knives. This is the steel wheel apostate, not in the same ballpark. The apostate's blade is going to favor toughness a little bit more. Of course, it's a titanium frame lock, so a little higher end. Of course, when it comes to, you know, heavy duty, sort of hard use, any kind of discussion like that, you really need to bring the Recon 1 in. You are going to pay a little more for Recon 1. They're about $100, so you can save yourself $30 and go with the Kizer. There are a lot of things to recommend the Recon 1. Not everyone likes the triad lock, and the price point is a little higher. So I can definitely see some people go, nah, you know, whoops, wow. Just trying to flip those over, it turns out to be much too difficult for me. Anyway, the Recon 1 is definitely a compelling choice at this price point. I do want to throw in, I've got the Real Steel links here, not just because it's so much comparable, but just to say, you know, it's not, you know, when we're talking about action and we're talking about high-end stuff, the links is going to be considerably, it's in a way different price tier. I get that. My point is, you know, this is the kind of action I was talking about when I was saying it doesn't have, you know, this super high-end refined action on it like something like the Lynx would have. And of course, the last knife we have to bring in, because I'm trying to make it into all my videos, is the Cold Steel Formax, the biggest, heaviest, craziest knife of them all, and that's how the Kizer compares to that. Okay, let's get this guy out of the way and wrap things up here with my overall take. Look, for the higher end of the budget scale, and I think these, I noticed these were on sale for around $65, a bunch of different places, 60 to $65. I don't know if Justin has any in stock. If he does, you can use my discount code Sharp Stuff. I also don't know if Southern Edge Knife Works has any in stock, but you could go over there and use the same discount code, save yourself a bit of money. Otherwise, this is definitely worth a look. If you're looking for something a little nicer, a little better action, and with a flipper tab, you know, than say a Rat Model 1 or a Spyderco Tenacious or some of those more budget-friendly knives, you want something just a little nicer, then this, I think, is a really good option without getting up to, you know, $100 or something like that. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know how you feel about the design. I actually find this to be a very attractive knife and a very well-balanced knife. It sort of walks that middle road quite well in terms of price, in terms of materials, in terms of size, and lots of other features. So pretty enjoyable knife. I can recommend this to most people. There will be some people who it's a little big for, and some people who are going to want to spend the extra money to go up to a, I don't know, a Recon 1 or a Spyderco or something like that. There you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will talk to you soon.